Your first project will be to animate this ball going through a maze. The ball will start here, and it will end up there, and it will travel through all of these walls, not hitting a single one of them, until it reaches the end. Your setup's probably going to look like this, and we want it to look a little bit different. So we're going to change the setup from the typical 4-panel view to a 2-panel setup. To do so, we're going to do it the old-fashioned way and go to Panels, Layouts, and 2 panes stacked. And then we have one pane on top of the other pane. The top pane is a top view. We're going to make sure that's an orthographic top view. And the bottom view is going to be the animation graph. So we have to switch to Panel, Graph Editor. There we go. And I'm going to delete this old animation that's on the ball. And I have a clean graph editor. There's nothing in it. So I'm just going to reposition things a little bit around. And that's my workspace on the upper top. And the bottom part is going to be my graph editor, where I do a lot of editing. So make sure yours looks like mine. If I middle mouse button and pull up and down on that bar, I can resize it. So if I go smooth shade all, then I can see my gray walls a little bit better. And it's easier for me to see where I'm animating. If I use my middle mouse button and roll, if I have a rolling button, I can zoom in and out. If I use my Alt key and my left mouse button, nothing happens because I'm not in perspective view. But if you use my Alt key and my right mouse button, I can zoom in and out. So that's my Alt key, right mouse button. And that moving up and down was done with my middle mouse Alt key. Middle mouse Alt key. You should have already done those training videos on how to use your mouse at the for the first week. So play around with your mouse. Make sure you can zoom in and out and pan left and right. We're going to go to the first frame and we're going to set our first keyframe. And it's important to get to that frame, and our animation is going to show up in the graph editor. So what I'm doing is I'm pressing S. I'm going to position my sphere and press S, and that gives me the first points in my animation graph editor. Then I'm going to go to the very end to frame 240, and I'm going to type in 240 to make sure that my timeline is long enough. And then I'm going to put in my final end frame. It's important to be at 240 before I move my sphere, or else I'll lose the movement. So I'm going to put my sphere and make sure I'm at 240 and press S. And when I press S, I will suddenly see lines in my animation editor. So I do. Now I'm going to go and play it, and I'll see that I've done the first major blocking of my animation. 240 frames equals 10 seconds at 24 frames per second. 120 is the halfway point. So look at that. It's already where I wanted to be at the halfway point. So I'm going to go ahead and make a keyframe at 120. And see, that doesn't really affect my curve much because it was already going there. So now I have the first stage of blocking done. I know where I'm starting, I know where I'm going, I know how long it's going to take, 10 seconds. Now I have to go through the maze and find the second stage of blocking, which is all those little points it's going to hit and make its turns at. So I need to animate each one of those turns. So the way I do it, I'm going to establish how many frames I have. I have 120 frames, that's 5 seconds, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 major turns. So I'm going to go about 12 frames for each of those 7 turns. Maybe I could do as many as 18. Doesn't really matter. But I'm going to block out each one of those turns by setting a keyframe. I'm going to make sure the ball is not hitting any of the walls. I'm going to press S and set a keyframe for everything. So my microphone didn't work, so I'm narrating after the fact, so I apologize if I don't exactly line up. Then I'm going to go to the second blocking and make sure that I moved about 12 frames up. Press S, and look what's happening down in my graph editor. 12 frames forward, go to my third blocking moment, press S. Then I'm going to go to about frame 50 or so and create another blocking moment. See how it's changing the animation graph editor. Then I'm going to go another 12 frames forward, press S again, about 4 or 5 frames this time, press S, and then I'm going to go to my last blocking. And I have a lot of extra frames in there, so this is going to be a slow motion, and I'm going to press S, and there I've got the second stage of blocking done. That only took you about 10 minutes. So play it, boom, 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 boom. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, about 10 keys animated. Now I have to finesse things a bit. These are my frames. This is my movement. This is where they are in time, and I'm just checking to see the ball goes into the walls a couple times, so I'm going to have to clean that up. So this next pass of animation is going to be my cleanup pass. I'm going to also take this down to 120 frames because we're only going to animate 120 of the frames of your assignment. We're going to look at the animation for it and clean it up. You, however, in your assignment are going to do 240 frames. So I notice I'm going into the walls a bit, so I'm going to need to do another pass of animation where I pull the sphere away from the walls. So it's going into a wall right about here, so I'm going to pull it a little bit to the left. And then I'm going to go forward a little bit, check out where it's hitting the walls again. Here, I'll pull it to a little bit to the right. Oh, here I'll pull it a little bit to the left and set a keyframe. Here I'll go a little bit around. It's doing okay. Keep going. Oh, I think I'll pull it a little bit to the right here. And I'm going to finesse it as it goes around every corner. Add a few keyframes, position it. Now notice I'm only moving these things either left and right or up and down. So I'm only going to be working with 2 animation curves. And if I look at my Cartesian plane, I'm working with my X curve and my Z curve. And I keep going for the remaining 2 keyframes to just clean them up. Add, press S, pull it away from the wall again, and then press S. Head off to my final. Yep, and here I need to pull away a little bit. A keyframe, pull away, and go around. Pull away a little bit, press S, closing in on the home stretch, press S, ooh, one more, and one more. So now I'm going to play it, and there you go. That is racing through the entire animation in 5 seconds, and it's not touching any walls. And it sounds like my son approves. So we use frame selection just to see our 120 frames. Actually, we're going to use frame the 120 frames, frame selection frame. And we're looking at all of our keyframes, and we need to clean up. We have way too many curves and too many keyframes. So framing selection, and then frame playback range for the 120 frames. And we see all these straight lines mean that there's no movement. So we want to delete any lines that have no movement on them. This has movement, so we're going to keep it. It's a translate X and a translate Z look like they're the curves that we're using. All these other curves are flat. So we can't just press a curve and delete it. We have to actually select the curve using the left mouse button and drawing a box around it and press delete. And that gets rid of it. So we'll go through all the ones that we're not using. Get rid of them. The translate Y, it's not going up and down, so we're going to delete that. See, it's straight. So the only translates we're keeping are translate X and Z, so left and right, up and down. And now we're looking back at the top view of our animation. And we may decide that we also have a few extra keyframes that we don't need. So now we're going to look at our actual keyframes, and we're going to frame the playback range. And we're going to go through the curve to see if there are any keyframes that lie on the curve that are unnecessary. And generally, I'm going to get rid of keyframes that make no dramatic change to the curve. Like if a curve is going up and there happens to be a tick, but it's not really changing anything, then I'll get rid of it as long as it doesn't change the movement. So I'm going to very slowly go through every tick that doesn't show an extreme position and get rid of it. So I'm looking up and down the curve, and this middle one right here, that is unnecessary. That one we'll get rid of because it lays out on the curve. It's not an extreme position. It's not the one at the very bottom. It's not the one on the very top. So now we just have our translate X and our translate Z, and we're looking at any extra keyframes we have, and that's the very bottom key. We go up the curve. That's an extra key right there. That's the very top key. We want to keep that. The one going down, we want to evaluate whether we need it. So now we're going to play the animation and look at it. And unfortunately, Camtasia cuts it down a little bit on me. But what I'm doing is I'm looking at the animation, and then I'm just deleting a key if deleting the key won't be a problem. So I will watch the animation, see what it does, then I'll delete the key and evaluate whether or not I can delete it. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it by selecting it left mouse and just pressing delete. And it doesn't change my curve at all. So when I play it, look at that, I can get rid of that key. So I'm going to do that for the rest of my 10 frames. I'm just playing the motion, making sure that it's not bumping into anything. And then frame by frame, that one I can probably get rid of right there. That one I want to keep. That one I can get rid of. And I delete it, and it doesn't change my curve at all. So now I'm going to go to the next one. I can probably get rid of this one because it's on the path to the highest. Look, it doesn't change my path at all. And you do this for every keyframe. Need that one, not that one. And it goes around. Now I want to do this for the translate Z. Now that was my X movement, and if you look at the Cartesian plane, that's the left-right movement. The translate Z is going to be the up and down movement. Translate Z is the blue curve. The red curve is the translate X, left and right. So I'm evaluating the left and right movement. And it looks like everything's clean. And get rid of every extra piece and then make sure that the movement's okay by getting rid of it. Okay, so I'm down to the basic animation. And these may look like the keyframes you started with, but still you trained your graph. And you're going to be keeping some keyframes on your X that you don't keep on your Z. And the difference is the left-right movement versus the up-down movement. So one final pass to make sure all the left-right movement is fine. I'm not bumping into anything. Cool. Now I'm going to do the same exact thing to the translate Z. Oh, and I'm going to save this file because I've completed something important, and I'm going to name it underscore version 1 or version 2. It's important to do this every 10 minutes or so. So actually I'm doing it a little late, but underscore version 2 and save. And save multiple versions of your files. So we're going to feel pretty confident this one's clean and we like it. Now I'm going to demonstrate a very, very, very important technique that we're going to practice every single week and every single time you do an animation. It's the first time we do it, so pay very close attention, take some notes here. You're going to select all the keyframes, then right click break tangents. Then you're going to right click weighted tangents. Then you're going to right click free tangent weight. What happens is you get these little blue and pink boxes on every keyframe. This is where you become the artist, the animator, because animation is all about fast in, fast out, slow in, slow out. What the computer has done is just an interpolation between 2 points, as it makes the most sense to the computer. They usually do it pretty even, pretty straight pace between 2 points, very robotic. But you as an animator want to bring it to life. So in this assignment, you're just going to practice playing with these curves. I want you to understand what they do. So if you're playing with the red curve, that's left and right, that's X. So if you change the out on this curve, it's going to change the left-right motion. So let's select the out for frame 9 and make it go out really fast. The reason it's fast is that it's leaving its position at, I believe, 0.5 and rapidly going into position. I can't see the number very well here, but I think positive 0.5 or whatever. I'll show you more in class. But as it rapidly leaves its point, it's rapidly moving. If it stays flat, like those lines that you saw earlier that you deleted, that means there's no movement. So springing away means it's rapidly leaving the origination position. Now mine's starting to go through the wall, so I can't go as fast as I wanted it to. Instead, I'm just going to go like that. And that's okay, that's an edited curve. That's fun. Now if the line is flat like this, that means that it's not going faster or slow from its origination position. So I'm going to go here where there's more of a dramatic adjustment. I'm going to do a fast out again. And I want you to play it and look at how the motion changes on your sphere when you do that. And this is almost something you have to pick up by touch. The math behind it is just that there's movement on this grid from one point in space to another point in space. Oh, and if you make a mistake like that, you just go Control Z. Because sometimes you can select it and you select the whole thing. Just go Control Z to delete it. I'm making another fast out there. And then I'm going to test how that changes my movement. Zing. See that? But it crosses into a wall. So I have to make less of a fast out. Now I'm doing a slow out. And now I'm going to try a slow in. And we'll play what that looks like. So it'd be kind of fun maybe for your assignments to have this thing fly down the corridors and then go very slow around the corners. But you're going to have to adjust it. And I want you to make those adjustments using the curve, because you did all your keyframes to get to the extreme positions, and now you're making adjustments using the curve to get around, and you're going to hit the wall sometimes. I don't want you making a fresh keyframe because you hit the wall. I want you to change the curve to get you around that wall. You understand that? And we'll practice this a lot in class. We're going to spend the entire class session on this assignment. Here is the Translate Z. So we're going to do the exact same cleanup that we did with the Translate X on the Translate Z. And this is the up and down motion. So here you can make it spring out of the gate. But remember, first you have to right click, break tangents. Then you have to right click, weight tangents. Then right click, free tangent weights. Then you can edit these curves. You select that. And you pull it up so it can rapidly race down into its new position. And it'll probably get there in about 3 frames, 3 to 5 frames. And we'll play it so you see that. And I'm going to make it really slow. I'm going to test that. So here I'm just repeating what I did on the X curve. So here I'm just doing a very fast in, a slow out, but a fast in, and we'll go over those a little bit more in class. And again, I just want you to play with what happens when you change the movement styles. So I'm just going to keep this playing, and you can see what my results were, how it changes the play when I edit.